Esperanza Spalding, Samba en Preludio. Listen to the set work with the score, link below this video. Before you listen to this video, and then listen to the set work after listening to this video, and explore the mind map yourself. The link for this is also below this video. Melody. There are two main melodies, heard separately at first and then combined at bars 89 to 104. Verse 1A. Oh, there's a lot there. So verse 1, there's an 8-bar idea, bars 4 to 11. Repeated with a different ending in bars 12 to 9. The melody is developed through rhythmic changes. The melody changes in bar 18, and here a jazzy flattened fifth, in this case F natural, is used to prepare for the descent to the tonic. So, melody in verse 1, a series of phrases linked by a common rising arpeggio, broken chord shape, bar 4, da 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 dee, and so on. The first or second note of each phrase descends by a semitone or tone in a long downward sequence. So we've had da 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 dee, and then da 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 da, da 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 da, getting lower and lower. The melodic line moves unusually, mostly by leaps of a third and occasionally of a seventh in bars 8 to 9. Right. Verse 2, the note values have doubled here, and an increase in tempo at bar 19, so that the apparent increase in phrase length is false. In other words, the phrases look as though they're twice as long, but they're not really, because it's just the way it's notated. There's a 16-bar idea, repeated like A with a different ending in bars 39 to 54. So, in other words, the A section had a melody which was repeated but with a different ending, and the B section has another melody which is repeated with a different ending. The melody is almost entirely conjunct, stepwise in movement, in contrast with A. Remember here, in A, the melodic line moves unusually mostly by leaps, whereas in this B melody, the melody is almost entirely conjunct. Bars 23 to 26 descend to the leading note. That's the raised 7th note of the scale. Here it's A sharp. Answered by a rising and falling idea in bars 27 to 30, which in itself is related to the ending of verse 1. This is all a bit complicated. Listen to the music and get the feel of it yourself. Bars 31 to 34 are in sequence with 23 to 26, a fourth higher. So look out for the sequence where the melody comes a fourth higher. Bars 34 to 35 repeat the flattened fifth idea from the end of verse 1 twice. The second time in sequence, a lower note. This is to move away from the tonic in order to set up the repeat. Again, this is all very complicated. You can read the rest there. There's another link with verse 1. Where was it? Oh yes, this jazzy flattened fifth idea, that was linked to the jazzy flattened fifth idea there at the end of the verse 1. Anyway, let's just make it very simple again. There are two main melodies. They're first heard separately, verse 1, verse 2, and then they're heard together after that. So, rhythm and meter in the introduction. The tempo during bars 1 to 3 is very free, and it is difficult to recognize a strong pulse. Verse 1 has a slow tempo with much rhythmic rubato, that's freedom taken with the tempo. The tempo almost doubles at bar 19, where the bass guitar begins the bossa nova tempo. Bossa nova. Bossa nova is a Brazilian style of music which was developed and popularized in the 1950s and 1960s. Here's an example of a bossa nova rhythm Bam, 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 bam. Free tempo returns at bar 114. The piece is, apart from 2 bars, wholly in 4/4 quadruple time, although the change of tempo from bar 19 onwards tends to make the piece from there on sound as if it's moving in 2 minims in a bar 2/2. The rhythms of the vocal melody in verse 1 are quite complex, although never syncopated enough to lose the sense of beat. There are frequent triplets, and rests effectively separate most of the phrases. You can see all that when you look at the score, when you listen to the set work. The bass part in verse 1 is complicated, making more use of syncopated rhythms than the vocals, and only occasionally using a typical bossa nova type rhythm. Oh, interesting. That all suggests that there's a bossa nova tempo, but not necessarily the typical bossa nova rhythm. In verse 2, the vocal line mostly in longer note values, but the start of the notes tend to be off the beat, syncopated, a quaver before the beat sometimes. There are fewer triplets in this section. From bar 23, the bass part plays much closer to the standard bossa nova rhythm. Dotted crotchet and quaver pairs, although still with some syncopations and quaver movement. The guitar part also adds to the rhythmic interest with both syncopated and unsyncopated passages. From bar 89, the vocal rhythms of verse 2 are less syncopated, perhaps in order to fit in more easily with those of verse 1. That's the bit where the 2 melodies combine. There are no dynamic markings in this piece. Context, well, a bit about the performer, the composer, the lyricist, the song and its genre, and something there about bossa nova. Wikipedia. I think that may be what we've already just looked at. Articulation. Texture. Introduction. Monophonic. Apart from a couple of double stops where 2 notes are played at once. The texture in general is mostly homophonic tune and accompaniment, but note that the bass part at times becomes almost melodic enough to be a melody in its own right. Bars 89 to 104. The passage at bars 89 to 104 is polyphonic, 2 or more separate melodies lines at once, as the 2 melodies of the piece are combined. We've mentioned that already. Structure. Well, introduction, verse 1, link, verse 2, guitar solo, voice and bass duet, and then the coda section. We've been through a lot of that already. Guitar solo, etc., etc. Look at all those things in detail to refresh your memory. Harmony. The harmonies are essentially tonal. They show the influence of jazz and of American popular song in being quite complex. Despite this, the movement of the chord roots, bottom notes, is still based around chords 1, 2, 4, and 5. Chords, well, there are frequent chord extensions where extra thirds are piled up on top of the triad to produce 7ths, 9ths, 11ths, and 13ths. So, da da da, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and then the 11th or more, and then the 13th, and so on. Other types of chords are used. Diminished 7th in bar 35, and a flattened 5th chord in bar 44. And chromatic chords are used. Chords containing notes outside the scale and the home key. C sharp 7, bar 31, and C and F major chords in bar 27 and 28. Cadences, those chords at the end, they are not used here in quite the same way as in classical styles, but the ends of the sections tend to land on either chord 5 or the tonic, so that's a bit like imperfect and perfect cadences. Chord progressions sometimes create a descending chromatic movement in the bass line. You may, by the way, be running out of space on this video, and if so, just carry on looking at the mind map yourself. Anyway, instrumentation. Well, there's some general points there. I won't go through them all now. There's information about Esperanza Spalding and her singing. The bass part, and the acoustic guitar. Range, vocal line is low, covers a minor tenth altogether. In verse 1, most of the phrases span a seventh. You can read all the other details. Tonality, well, the piece is in B minor. Most or many bossa novas use minor keys. But despite the complexity of some of the harmony, which we've talked about already, the music does not modulate to change key. So, word setting. The words are set syllabically with one musical note to each syllable of the text. The lyrics are in Portuguese.